and welcome to The Old School, a podcast on educational issues, the American education system, and the problems therein, possible solutions, insofar as we know the solutions. This is Ross Miller, live and wide awake from North Texas. Good morning, Herr Dr. Bourgeois.
Good morning, Mr. Miller. It's a pleasure to hear you and see you bright and early at 1:21 on a Saturday afternoon.
I had a lot of stuff going on this morning, so we had to kind of take care of business, as it were. The kids going to the grandparents for a week.
You say that with a smile in your voice and on your face.
And if they had video, there would be a glint in my eye. And so, yes, the kid is gone. I am going to miss her. It should be said. But
it should be, and it was.
And it wasn't.
Well, that's exciting. You know that I'm going out of town this week too.
And where are you going to go?
Well, I'm taking a road trip to, of all cities, to Indianapolis.
Oh, Jesus.
You said, what's wrong with Indianapolis? This is for a band competition. My son's in a band competition. I don't need to give any details, but I'm looking forward to the road trip. And Indianapolis is one hell of a town. The food, the culture, the football, everything about that town.
Let's talk about the culture a little bit. A culture that takes rather than creates.
What are you talking about?
A culture that absconds rather than formulates for themselves.
You can't jump on a rant against Indianapolis. Do you know all roads lead to Indy? If you try to go to any part of the country, you go through Indianapolis. There's just no way around it.
Well, it's the same with hell. You're going to go through hell no matter where you go in life. You might as well go through Indianapolis.
You might as well just get this off your chest, because there's obviously some baggage with that.
There's baggage. Baggage.
And I want to know. So what happened? What's with you in Indianapolis, sir?
I was a young man. 1984, March 30th, 1984. And Mayflower trucks backed up to the Baltimore Colts complex and stole that team in the middle of the night, a middle of a snowy night, a night that no one else would be caught dead in. Yet these yahoos and these Mayflower trucks packed up the entire team and moved them to a town that, as a famed Baltimore sports writer once wrote, where the best bagel in town could be found in the frozen food section of your local grocery store. The town is not to be taken seriously. They're scavengers, is what they are. They're vultures sitting there waiting for other places to die and to pick clean the bones of civilization. And in a vain attempt of getting a little bit for themselves, yet failing miserably. So that's what Indianapolis has done. That is the damage they caused. There were tears. There were shouts of frustration. There were bemused and bewildered looks of why. There were appeals to the government. Can't you do anything? This is when I realized that the government can't save us.
So weren't the Colts? I mean, when I think of the Colts, I think of Peyton Manning and Indianapolis and that little. They have a nice blue and white helmet. What are you getting at? Are you saying there was another Colt team besides the Indianapolis Colts?
You're a horrible person. You damn well know there was another team.
And where did
There's no way your memory and the words of Ted Lasso could be like a goldfish. There's no way that you do not recall the great years of the Baltimore Colts. Johnny Unitas, Artie Donovan, to a lesser extent, Burt Jones, the Blackwood brothers in the defensive backfield. Come on.
Well, I see them on NFL Films a lot. They pretty much show when they lost to Joe Namath and the Jets. That's really the press I see from the Colts.
That's one game. One game. We have been known to be on the victor's end of what is largely considered the greatest NFL game in history. Colts versus Giants in the Polo Grounds across the frozen tundra of New York City. Not Don Amici. That's the actor.
Alan Amici. Come on, I even know that.
Alan Amici over the top into the end zone. Touchdown Colts. Victoire.
that was one of the questions on that great movie Diner. To see if the woman would get to marry the character played by Steve Guttenberg, if I recall.
Yes. Yes. So I would not have been able to marry Steve Guttenberg because I accidentally said Don Amici. Once more, we show our age for a bunch of different fronts.
Absolutely. Well, so that's it. You've just dismissed Indianapolis because of a childhood grudge.
Yes.
Okay.
I write off that whole city. I call into question every fiber of their being.
Well, didn't you mention
how do they sleep at
what?
night? How do they sleep at night?
You just talked about Mayflower, and you were traveling. Did you Did you see any Mayflower trucks in your trip up north recently?
Is that coffee you're drinking?
It is.
Listen, I bet you, like a lot of Marylanders, the first time they left Maryland in some sort of kind of mid-Atlantic Rumspringa, you leave Maryland and, see if you'll go back or what have you. But the first time I left Maryland, I was shocked to find that Mayflower trucks were still around because they had left Maryland for years. And you just never saw. I just assumed they went out of business. Just maybe because of the shame of it all, but those trucks are just merrily going down the highways and byways of America today, not a care in the world. Doesn't matter if they affected and damaged and emotionally scarred a whole generation of Baltimoreans. They don't care. They don't care.
It explains a lot. So do you wave at them when you see them drive by?
I think it's called the Italian digit.
Oh my goodness.
But I do it kind of underneath the car. I'm not here to pick fights, but still there should be great moral dilemmas within the upper echelons of that company.
I will tell our listeners that Mr. Miller tells the story about every time I see him, and I see him, almost weekly, if not more often.
You're an idiot. We haven't talked about this in years.
Really, it doesn't take anything to set you off. And I worried about the topic of this podcast because we are going to discuss sports, specifically football at the high school level,
right?
And the effect or impact on the classroom, what happens in school in general. And I figured we'd get that story out of the way because you were going to delve into it anyway. As soon as I mentioned ball or something like that, he would have said, I remember when I was a kid, they ripped it out of my, yeah. So
I'm glad.
Just get it behind us.
I'm glad that you find as a source of amusement the pain, the suffering that I and many of my fellow compatriots went through those many years ago. So
no, it was sad the first time you told it, and then it's become a bit of a comedy shtick. But I can tell that the tears are real. I will say that.
And let's be frank. There have been times where the gods have aligned to create a scenario that could not have been predicted otherwise. Like the time we met that one German in Bonn who said he'd only been to the United States once. And it was to Indianapolis, and you were in the middle of drinking coffee, and you almost did a spit take over the table.
It was just perfect. I'm turned to you to see your expression, and for the first time, you were speechless.
I think my head was down on the table or something.
That was pretty good. So it does come back. Well,
yeah.
Well, in the time we have left, which isn't much. Tell us about the start of football season in high school, and do you even notice it as a history teacher? Does it make its way into your classroom?
Well, I don't know how you can't notice it. I mean, because not unlike, sports serves a function that in part provides identity, be it identity for a country. If your team is playing in the World Cup or playing in the Olympics or what have you, whether you're talking about a state, like a state, a state university, whether you're talking about a town and like a professional sports team, sports teams provide identity. And to that degree, schools always in search of things that will galvanize support, not just from the community, but also from the student body behind a singular idea, will often turn to sports as a component of that. And so, it should be said, especially for folks who are not from Texas, that Texas has a special bond with its sports teams, particularly football, and it holds a special place. The fall is basically, for a teacher, it's a navigation of assembly and pep rally scheduling, because on a periodic basis, throughout the fall semester, there are pep rallies for the football team for sundry of reasons. And, so it's omnipresent. Now there are other sports, of course, I've taught many fine athletes across the board, everything from, soccer and baseball to more marginalized sports like tennis, but
that was a cheap insult because I'm a former and maybe future tennis coach at the high school level. And I noticed that right when you started laughing as you said it.
But I think it kind of goes hand in hand. And I think that, the things that we're about to say with regards to sports in schools, it cannot be said at the expense of the people who coach it, because our coaches, there are bad coach / teachers, just like there's bad teachers. And so that in and of itself cannot be a point of discussion. But what needs to be discussed, only because the reputation is so much the other way, is that there are many great teachers / coaches that are in essence excelling in two jobs at the same time. If you've ever had to double dip and work two gigs, in your life, then you know a little bit about what it's like to be a coach and a teacher, because you're doing that. In other states, they have different setups for their coaches, but in the state of Texas, coaches teach as well, and so it's an omnipresent sort of thing. And you have the support staff, cheerleaders, you have marching band, you have everything else that's in support of the identity that is helped created by sports teams.
Well, you mentioned, a list there, the marching band, and, I'm a band parent, and all of my 3 kids are in band, and it's quite a remarkable program. Again, particularly in Texas, the bands are nationally ranked here. But if you look in the stands, most of those people at the football games are there to see the band. They're parents of the band, because the band is much, much bigger than the football team. It's not even close. And some of the fair weather parents will stay until halftime in the halftime show, then leave, and you see the parking lot getting empty. But that program, I guess it did originate and kind of feeds from football, but it kind of goes both ways. And in some ways, we can group all of that in cheerleaders and drill team, and if you look at all that, it's a big chunk of your student body.
It's a big chunk of the student body. It's a big chunk of the school budget, time, energies. A lot is put into, vice principals are required to be the vice principal on scene for any athletic endeavor. And so there has to be an administrative presence. Oftentimes teachers will volunteer to keep score or whatever else the case may be. There's other perfunctory kind of duties that are associated with various sports, everything from wrestling to basketball to, what have you. And so, all of these things, sports can be, especially in Texas, sports can be, as I said, a galvanizing, but an all-encompassing sort of thing. Now, the question is, what are the good things about that and what are the bad things? We have talked about it in the past. We have compared the topic du jour. That's the topic of the day in French.
Thank you.
Bourgeois. but we have in the past, we have correlated our topic with, how things are in Germany, for instance, that being the kind of the system that we are most familiar with, but and of course, in Germany, there is no school sports. There are certainly recreational opportunities both before and after school, and a lot of those are connected to the town itself, not necessarily to the school. But you just don't see it there. So, especially coming from a coach's point of view, as you are, what do you see as the biggest advantages of a vibrant, healthy sports image within a school?
I'm really having trouble finding any negatives to the a flourishing athletic program. I mean, I think back on my years as a coach, and maybe I've said this before, but I think that the best teaching I ever did was on the tennis court by far. And it has to do with the relationship with the students, the fact that they are there because they want to be, and you can push them in a different way. You can talk to them differently. You get to know them much better. And you're in these high pressure circumstances with them where you just grow to trust each other when things are on the line. So all of that, they develop teamwork, not pretend teamwork like you do when you have group projects in school, but they're honestly, depending on each other, and they monitor each other as much as the coach monitors them. So they get opportunities to lead, not to pretend to lead like on a PowerPoint presentation. They're the first person to speak, but leaders emerge, on the athletic field. They're learning all of these virtues of competition. I could talk all day on this, but just something like tennis, the beauty of the sport, and I think many sports are like this, is that after you lose a point, you walk back, you turn around, and then you start over, you play another point, and you put that right behind you. And that lesson happens in football after every play. Basketball, certainly the other team is scoring, and you have to take that, then you move on. So I think it teaches resilience, and there's just so many virtues at play, as it were. And I haven't even talked about baseball yet, so that's pretty good.
Well, I think one of the things that certainly favors your viewpoint is that when you look at it in total, and especially when you look at it in regards to what it does for the individual, those individual young men and women who have taken it upon themselves to sacrifice, to dedicate themselves to something, not only to see success, but to pursue failure. I'm not sure if you can find a better way of shaping and molding the kind of characteristics that you want in an individual like you can on the field of play. Okay. The problem is there's a flip side to that coin. And the flip side is not directly because of athletics, but it's a kind of a tangential effect of athletics. One has to deal with the time that students spend on the pitch or on the court or on the golf course, whatever, in lieu of studying, preparing, prepping. Now in Texas, though, I mean, these students are having to double dip, and they have to, because if they do not perform in the classroom, they do not get the opportunity to perform at their various athletic endeavors. So there's that. But you're also putting an extraordinary amount of pressure on the kiddo to try to balance those two. Second of all, just class time missed from a teacher point of view. You start to kind of, if a kid is involved in football in the fall and baseball in the spring, you're talking about an extraordinary amount of time that they're going to miss as a result. Something like football, that can be curtailed to the days around a weekend, but something like tennis or baseball or some of the other sports where it's not defined necessarily by a particular part of the calendar, those days can stretch all across a week, and it's an extraordinary amount of time loss that could have been used to help the kid through something academically, as opposed to, them spending their time focused on athletics. So, and then that's not even taking into account pep rallies and all this other stuff that tends to go with it. There is, I think, from a teacher point of view, not to distinguish ourselves from the teacher coaches, but from the just pure teacher point of view, there's the time loss. And I think that's probably the biggest from an academic point of view, that's the biggest knock on high school athletics.
Well, let me address both of those. First of all, on the time, it definitely is substantial. And some sports are year round. I know tennis is. There are technically 2 seasons. Football has a season, but then many, as you said, do other sports. From my own observations, 25 years teaching, this is a blanket statement, but the athletes were the best students I had. And by athletes, I include people in band and people in in programs related to athletics. I mean, because they are so heavily scheduled, they tend to be organized and do their study time and don't spend their time, I mean, today playing video games and tuning out. So there's something about that, just like in college, you tend to do better when you have a fuller schedule than if you just have 9 hours or something. But that's an observation. The assembly is interesting because I will say, as a classroom teacher, as opposed to a coach, I mean, I had both hats.
Right.
There was something a little bit off-putting that they're parading the most popular students, the ones involved in these, constantly, just to remind those other kids, look at those, kind of hit them on the back of the head. Why aren't you like that?
You'll never be there. You'll never be there.
but they're not. I mean, let's face it, they can't like parade the AP U.S. history students there, and
why not?
I mean, I've been in a school where they've tried that, and it's actually quite fun. Where the AP kids would walk around, everybody would cheer as they went around before the test, and I think it's great. But by and large, there is something communicated to the student body by the prominence, I guess, of athletics, particularly football, and as a non-football sport. It was interesting that the people up there talking to the crowd and everything were the football players. And even though it wasn't necessarily, I mean, it certainly wasn't the only sport, but football in Texas is king. That's for sure.
Well, there is one other side to this. And because certainly you are right. And I can certainly attest in the years that I've taught, your athletes tend to be, sometimes in equal measure, knuckleheads, but also the hardest workers, within a particular class, because they've got something to lose. It's not just a purely kind of required function that they're performing within the classroom, but it has a direct tie to something that they care about more than the subject at hand, and that helps kind of guide them through their studies, and guide them through the fact that they don't have a lot of time. But the other aspect, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the idea of funding and the funding of schools. And there is an extraordinary amount of money spent on funding athletic endeavors. And not just the athletic endeavors themselves, like the regular season, but if you have a district, for example, who have a fairly successful record across the board in their sports, then the school district is also spending an inordinate amount of money getting these kids to various playoff sites, hotel rooms, travel, gas, trucks, rental cars, buses, whatever the case may be. There is an extraordinary amount of money that's spent to kind of feed those various playoff endeavors. So we're not just talking about a football team that plays 10 games and then Bob's your uncle, but rather 10 games and then maybe a trip to Austin and then maybe a trip somewhere else, or what have you. On that side of things, is that a harder argument from a coach's point of view to have? Because certainly you're spot on with your academic response to those academic concerns. Is there a problem with athletics in relation to funding?
I think that the amount of funding that the individual sports receive, I mean, I can tell you it's not that high. I mean, the expenses are deferred by booster clubs. There's a lot of fundraising that happens. I mean, about the only revenue generating sport is football. So they do bring in some money, which, just like in college, is distributed across the other programs most likely. But I honestly don't know the funding from a school district on athletics. But you're also paying for coaches. I mean, these are personnel, so add that to the list that you just had. So the question is it worth it? What about the opportunity cost? Could that be better used to hire more math teachers? So there is something there. So is the benefit worth the cost? And I guess that's kind of what we're talking about.
And this is where we look at our brothers and sisters over across the pond. Are their jobs made easier or more difficult for the lack of athletics within the confines of their structure, their curriculum, or what have you? And that's how you have to look at, I think, budgetary questions, because either it's worth the money or it's not worth the money,
Well, you mentioned Germany, even the idea of school spirit. It's not really, they would laugh
Yeah.
if you said that. And maybe it's the culture there, but not having something that they all get behind and follow. And the Friday night, it's a magical thing, Friday night in Texas and many states, to not have that experience. It really does, pull the students together. So I think that the Germans are missing out in a way, and I think that they would probably love it. When they visit us, we always take them to sporting events, football if possible, and they come away really excited about it. So they're missing a part of growing up, I think.
Well, it's certainly for the Germans to come over here, it's part of what they associate with the typical American high school. They think about. I think about football players and cheerleaders and pep rallies and just the whole spectacle that's associated with sports. And then you get the band, which is where your three very talented children have applied their craft. And so it's not an easy discussion. I think sometimes teachers who do not have a direct connection with athletics and who do not understand the interconnectedness between athletics and the school building, they're a bit too easy and they're a bit too quick to dismiss the importance of athletics. I think for those who are not interested in sports, just as a rule, I think that they are missing some aspect of this and some of the reasons why we have it. That said, it does beg the question, can it be done differently? Can it be done in a more efficient way? Can it be done in such a way that it benefits the school's primary function, which is to educate kids, better than it currently does?
I think in Texas, the fact that the UIL, the group that oversees, for the state athletics, has a grade. You need to have the grades. You need to be passing your classes to play is huge, and that fills one of the potential gaps, of a strong athletic program. There's something that you see on television shows occasionally. There's always a coach who's pretty overbearing, and he goes up to teachers when their kids, their star quarterback's failing, and they give the teacher grief, and the teacher has to have a moral moment where they say, no, I'm going to give them a failing grade because they earned it or whatever. But in my experience, it's really been the opposite. The coaches will go up to you and say, you tell us if my players are misbehaving, and I'll work with them on that. And beyond that, if you give us a heads up that they're struggling, thanks. But I've never experienced that once. Coaches are very professional and they're sensitive to that. And I think that they are not going to advocate. In fact, they're seeing this as a educational moment. If a student fails and misses a week. So that's been my experience. How about you?
Well, when I was a new teacher, there was one coach who tried to, not in a not so subtle sort of way, make the case that so and so should be passing. Now I was different than your average first year teacher. I spent 4.5 years in the military. I was not inherently impressed by a coach coming into my classroom, and so, I don't know what he thought he was going to do. I don't know what he thought. And to be fair, he was the only one. We had many great coaches. And like you said, I think most coaches, the vast majority of coaches, are very sensitive to any kind of implication that they would try to, intimidate, or otherwise try to cajole a teacher to do something. Not that hasn't happened, but it's only happened once in my entire career, and it was at the first year, and so it's something that's very rare. And you're right, most of the coaches just want to know, how do you get knucklehead over here to start doing what they're supposed to be doing, or what do they need to start doing? Now, having said that, what I saw a lot early on were coaches making sure their players did not end up in certain teachers' classes if they thought a teacher might be a bit on the more difficult side, and if they did not think the kid had academically the chops to handle a particular teacher, they might redirect them to another classroom. I've heard that before. But again, that is years and years and years ago, So I think now is, the coaches, I think you're right. I think the coaches see it as a teaching opportunity. They see it as a character building opportunity. And I think they prefer I'm trying to figure out the right way of saying it. I think they prefer the lesson over the absence of it.
Yes. And again, I recall lots of athletes bringing a little sheet to sign, a progress report, which is just a best practice. It's good. And I was always happy to do it. And if they were in need of a little bit of catch up, you let the coaches know. So, very professional in the way that they handled it. And, but I think it gives the students some ownership. I liked that interaction. The kid didn't just drop that on your desk and say, "Here, give me a sign here," but it was respectful. And so I think the lessons are getting through, and I'm pretty complimentary about athletes in general, but student athletes tend to know how to talk to adults a little bit. They've had a different type of interaction, and so the lessons show. I think
so. Well, as we depart for the week, it does make me wonder, get you on record, since we now have a podcast and we have now a recorded mechanism by which to solidify any predictions or prognostications you choose to make. Who wins the Super Bowl this year?
You're asking me now?
Now.
I usually wait till halftime of the game itself, and then I come bold with a prediction. I'm not going to be crazy and pick Indianapolis, even though they have a new quarterback. Coming in.
That would be cruel. That wouldn't make any sense.
No, I mean, I know it. One of the teams you root for is Tampa Bay, and they're the defending champions. They have the great Tom Brady. I would not bet against them on any day, and so that's my prediction. I stand by it.
And by the way, less people listening think that my fandom of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is some recent Johnny-come-lately kind of endeavor. One, you can attest that as long as you've known me, 12 years or so, more so, I guess, I've been a Bucs fan. That was the team whose arms I sought comfort in when the Colts left. I ran headlong, not even thinking, into the creamsicle orange and white uniforms of Bruce the Buck, and felt myself once more loved, appreciated as a fandom. And so that was my bounce back relationship after the Colts left Baltimore.
well, that's a good way to phrase it. We'll come back to the Buccaneers in their early seasons, because I know you have a lot to say about their perfect season early on.
Indeed.
But I do want to be clear that my prediction is not my loyalty, because if they find their way playing the Green Bay Packers, for one, I certainly wouldn't root for Tampa Bay, because I come to the Packers from my father. I come by them honestly, and I'm a little bit. I guess I am on the fence on Dallas all the time. We live in Dallas, but it's really hard to root against or root for a team that you spend your whole childhood rooting against.
Well, yeah, no self-respecting individual outside the state of Texas should be rooting for the Cowboys in any kind of legitimate sort of way. You got other teams you got to be rooting for. Now, the problem is that because of the various movements as a child, you claim or have claimed at different times the Packers. Was it the 49ers or the Rams?
No, you're spreading misinformation. I'm a Packer fan.
Through and through.
Absolutely.
You went through the Lynn Dickey years, and
no, I've never rooted against the Packers, and I never will. So we'll leave it at that. A strong statement on the record.
Very good. All right. Well, with that, have fun in the the town of Indianapolis, and I can't even say that with a straight face. But though sincerely, safe travels, great endeavors by you and yours over the course of the next week, and we'll see you next time around. Here, Dr. Bourgeois.
Thank you, sir. Herr Miller, enjoy your week as well, and auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.